Welcome back. Let me start with the point that you made, Dr. James. This economy's never grown at 8%. I don't even think it grew at 8% during the high point of apartheid. I think somewhere around 6 or 7%, I'm subject to correction. How on earth do you think that through the private sector you're going to generate this 8% growth rate so miraculously?
By having the right mix of policies implemented, upgrading our skills profile, creating an environment that is attractive to foreign investment. I mean, economics 101 is that if you want more jobs, you need more foreign investment and you need more domestic investment. That requires certain actions on the part of the state.
Do you accept as well as the Minister suggested that we need significantly more expenditure on infrastructure?
Yes, we quite agree with that. Currently
Through the
expenditure. Yeah, oh yes.
You agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. We're spending at 7% right now, 7% of GDP on infrastructure. It's way too low. And in fact, we underinvested in infrastructure in the 1990s, late 1990s.
But you complain that our tax rates are too high, so where are we going to get all the money from?
Well, we must drive it up to 10% of GDP in order to invest
so you're
in
going to
infrastructure.
increase our tax rates? Mr.
Well,
Harris is not going to be pleased with you. He always talks about the fact they're too high.
Well, we have to balance the budget in some way, but growing at 7% is just not good enough.
Now, can I ask you, you've been blamed by your comrades on the left here,
yes,
that you've basically adopted neoliberal policies and that you've overemphasized the private sector, not given enough attention to the state, and effectively we're in the job mire as a result of that. That's his criticism of you.
Well, I think that we need to see why we're in the job mire. I think that we grew up from an economy which during colonialism and apartheid was dominated by a gold mining industry which absorbed large numbers of people in low-skilled pick and shovel work. And that basically passed its peak in the 1970s. Along with that, we've had the global ICT revolution, which is wiping out low-skilled jobs across the border everywhere in the world. So I think the challenges are that we need to move up the value chain, we need to move into value-added activities. And I do believe that the state has a very, very critical role to play in this regard. And I think that some of the measures we've introduced under our industrial policy have begun to show the results. And some of those have been, I think, far from neoliberal. We have actually done things like taken decisions that we will localize, that we will buy certain percentages of all the purchases from government, the government makes, particularly in relation to the infrastructure program, from local manufacturers to defined percentages. We've also, I think, taken a much more strategic and developmental approach to trade policy. But with all due respect to Floyd, I think if you think that you can just ban all food imports from around the world and there won't be any consequences of that, I think that's pie in the sky. I think we've got to do this in a context of some realization of what the balance of forces is, what is possible, and certainly what's possible is that the state can play a very active role, but we have to, I think, also understand what is possible and what's realistic, and what is not going to just create a complete paralysis in economic activity.
Now, I want to then first deal with the naivety of the DA. About saying that you can create jobs out of the private sector. It has been attempted for a very long time and it never worked.
And where's it worked in the public? And where's it worked in the public sector? What precedent do you have?
Look. If you look into all countries that have industrialized successfully, even the lead industrializers in South Korea, Japan, Singapore, the state always played a leading role in terms of
then what happened
value
eventually?
adding, which the minister is speaking about.
And
they sustained that.
So you agree with them? You agree with the minister?
It's only when industries are strong that you can then submit to global competition and a variety of other things. Now, the issue of saying that we can ban all food imports. At least South Africa must produce its own food to feed itself.
But what
we can't
you do?
rely even on areas that have got capacity.
But I think the point, in fairness, and the minister can correct me if I got him wrong, I'm sure he will, is assuming for the purpose of debate that you became the government on the 8th of May.
Yes.
Right? I know you think you're going to be, but that's another matter.
We're going to be. We don't think we know we're going to be.
Yes. You're not talking about...
We know we're going to be. Look,
we're not talking about polls now. I'm just giving you a hypothetical. And I'm asking you, the minister says, if you suddenly banned imports of food in a short term like this, it'd be absolutely disastrous. That's what you said.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Right?
No,
and how do you respond to
I
this?
say we can have a strategic approach.
No, it's not
we
going
can
to
try
be,
to support local production.
It's not going to be a declaration, right? Look, years recently increased the tariffs on chicken imports and other
you
things,
support
right?
that?
No, look, we support that, but it can't be left alone. There must be a strategic support of chicken farmers to make sure that they produce more and more chicken. But also there must be protection of all other sectors of the food economy, not only chicken, because that can create many job opportunities.
All right, okay. But let me, I'll come back to that, but I want to ask you, he's accusing you of saying, if you look, for example, at the Great Asian Miracles, huge intervention by the state, massive kind of industrialization, far more than it seems to me that your manifesto is prepared to bear.
In the case of Japan, for example, Japan had an industrial policy strategy, and so had Korea.
South Korea,
very focused, and what they did was create an incentive architecture, and there was state intervention.
Would you agree with that?
Up to a point. I think it goes too far.
Why does it go too far?
I think, for example, that the present government goes far too far. The Ministry of Trade and Industry tries to regulate everything that moves. Yeah.
I'll give you a chance, Minister. I want
to say that what you need to do is create conditions for private sector growth, appropriate conditions. What's happening presently is massive instability in the intellectual property rights regime, instability in terms of mining rights now introduced, instability if you look at the private security bill, asking for 51% domestic investment.
Look, I think
in terms of ownership. So
yes, I want to move on to this.
Point. Can I just make one concluding point?
Yes. Quick point, because I want to move on to
the state clearly has a role to play. Nobody says the state doesn't have a role to play.
I'm trying to work out how big this role is.
The role must be an appropriate one. One of the key things.
What does that mean?
It means you jack up the education system so there are enough skills
now we know what you're talking about.
It means that there's proper service delivery. It means there's stability in the intellectual property rights regime.
Minister, you wanted to
You see,
and I'll give you a chance.
This is the debate that we had in our budget debate a year or so ago, where the DA was saying we must have a lighter touch industrial policy. And I said, well, let's take a concrete example. I went to go and open a television factory in Atlantis with the Premier of the Western Cape. And the owners of that factory told us the job creation and the industrial development that happened there owed its existence to the 12I tax incentive, to the tariff rebate scheme which we put in place, and to the localization of set-top boxes. Now I said, in the name of lighter touch, which of those must we pull in order to achieve this, the state is to involve?
I want to give you a chance, Floyd, but I've got to take a break, and then I'll be back to you immediately.
News that moves. ENCA.com.